The Ice Age, 20,000 years before the first cities, before the first kings. A wind slices across the endless white of Pleistocene North America. Snow falls gently, hiding the violence beneath. A herd of ancient horses races across the frozen plain, hooves pounding, breath steaming, eyes wide with fear. But they're not alone. Out of the mist, shadows move. Low to the ground, muscles rippling beneath thick winter fur. Eyes sharp, steps silent. A pack of dire wolves, real, brutal, and hungry. One breaks formation. Its massive frame surges forward, powerful limbs driving it through the snow. Then, impact. Its jaws slam shut on the flank of a young mare with a force that makes bone yield like dry wood. There's no second chance, no struggle, only silence. Pierced by the crunch of snow beneath victorious paws. You've heard the name dire wolf in legends, but this beast was no myth. It was real, and for thousands of years, it was one of Earth's most dominant predators. But what was the dire wolf, truly? A fantasy made flesh, or a forgotten apex predator lost to time? The dire wolf. The name alone conjures images of oversized beasts prowling frost-bitten forests, creatures of instinct, blood, and bone. For many, it echoes from the halls of pop culture, massive, loyal companions from the world of Game of Thrones. But the real animal was far more remarkable, and far less understood. It wasn't a fantasy. It was flesh and fur. A towering predator that stalked the Americas long before humans ever carved stone into myth. Named Enochion Dirus, terrible wolf, it first appeared over 250,000 years ago. It thrived during some of the Earth's most brutal ice ages, and when it hunted, it did so as part of a tight-knit pack, capable of taking down prey many times its size. But let's be clear, this was not just a bigger version of today's gray wolf. Bigger, yes, stronger, undoubtedly, but genetically, a distant cousin, not a sibling. Its legend has been wrapped in fiction, oversized and overimagined. But the truth is colder, older, and far more impressive. Because the dire wolf didn't just survive in a world of giants, it competed, and it ruled. So, who was this Ice Age monarch? To know that, we have to go back to where its story began. Long before the ice, long before the packs, there was a divergence. 5 million years ago, deep in evolutionary time, the ancestors of the dire wolf parted ways from the lineage that would become gray wolves, coyotes, and even domesticated dogs. While their cousins thrived in Eurasia, this bloodline remained in the Americas, evolving separately, adapting to a different battleground. This was not just a variant of the modern wolf. It was a parallel predator, forged on a different evolutionary track. For decades, scientists believed dire wolves were simply massive relatives of Canis lupus. They looked similar. The same pointed ears, the same long snout, the same primal glare. But looks, as it turns out, can lie. In 2021, a groundbreaking DNA study changed everything. Ancient genetic material, pulled from fossilized dire wolf bones, revealed a stunning truth. The dire wolf wasn't just separate. It was more distant from the gray wolf than lions are from leopards. This wasn't Canis at all. It was Enochion, literally terrible wolf, a name that reflects both its uniqueness and its power. This is a phenomenon called convergent evolution, where unrelated species evolve similar features to solve the same problems. Wings in birds and bats, sharks and dolphins, wolves and dire wolves, different origins, similar solutions. While gray wolves developed speed and adaptability, dire wolves chose a different path. Power, bone-cracking jaws, muscular builds. They weren't built to adjust. They were built to dominate. And as the Ice Age tightened its grip, that dominance would shape the fate of North America's most fearsome ecosystem. If you found yourself face to face with a dire wolf, you might think that's just a really big gray wolf. But look closer, and you'll see the difference written in muscle, in bone, in bite. At its peak, a dire wolf weighed up to 150 pounds. Solid, stocky, with a build closer to a modern-day mastiff than a slender forest runner. Its frame was lower to the ground, its chest broader, its limbs thicker, designed less for sprinting and more for overpowering. And then, there were the jaws. The dire wolf's skull was massive. Reinforced ridges and wide jaws anchored immense jaw muscles, delivering a bite force of over 1,400 pounds per square inch. That's not just strong. That's strong enough to crush through bone, not chew it, shatter it. Modern gray wolves dismember prey with technique. The dire wolf simply applied pressure until the bones gave way. Its teeth were thicker, heavier, worn down from a life of ripping through skin, tendon, and cartilage to reach the marrow within. Some fossil specimens show teeth filed nearly flat, a predator that used every inch of its arsenal. This was a creature shaped by a brutal menu. Bison the size of box trucks. Ice Age camels, shaggy, muscular horses. Prey that stood, fought, kicked, and kept coming. The dire wolf wasn't built to chase for miles. It was an ambush brute, relying on teamwork and raw force, getting in close and making the first strike the last. Even its scent glands were larger, giving it an acute sense of smell, more than enough to track wounded prey across open tundras or detect the death of a rival's kill. In every way, it was an instrument of precision violence, not elegant, but effective. A predator not of tomorrow, but of the last great wilderness. A North America ruled by giants, and the wolves bold enough to hunt them. The hunt ended hours ago. Now, under a pale Ice Age moon, the pack gathers. There are bones to gnaw, fresh scars to lick, and young mouths to feed. The dire wolf wasn't just a solitary killer. It was a creature of the pack, bound by blood, loyalty, and survival. Fossil beds like those at La Brea tar pits don't just tell us these wolves lived in groups. They scream it. Entire clusters of skeletons, adults, subadults, even adolescents, preserved together. Some with healed injuries. Signs of wolves that couldn't have survived alone. It was the pack that brought them food. The pack that defended them. The pack that made them more than just muscle and fang. And that structure began from the very start. Picture it. A snow-covered den, nestled beneath the roots of a wind-worn pine. Inside, pups huddle together, eyes barely open, warmed by the body heat of their mother and fed by a kill brought home days earlier. Already they nip and tussle, play fighting, learning the very skills they'll need to survive. Every howl had a meaning, every movement, a signal. Silence wasn't hesitation. It was communication. Researchers believe dire wolves, much like modern wolves, operated with high levels of coordination. Their size and strength were formidable, yes, but their true weapon was teamwork. Together, they could encircle prey. One group would provoke the charge, the others would flank. A wall of fangs, closing in ever tighter. Even Ice Age horses or juvenile mammoths stood little chance against the strategy of an organized pack. Still, life wasn't without its dangers. Competition among pack members, injuries from prey, or worse, starvation. In times of scarcity, packs might have splintered, fought over food, or even turned on the weak. But when the Ice Age roared its loudest, it was the unity of the pack that kept the dire wolf at the top of the food chain. Not just muscle, not just bite, but family. This wasn't a peaceful world. It was a world of titans. Stretching from the grasslands of what is now the American Midwest to the mountain valleys of prehistoric California, the dire wolf walked among giants and killers. Mammoths, mastodons, giant sloths. But it wasn't the herbivores that posed the greatest threat. It was the competition. The dire wolf was not alone at the top. It shared its bloody throne with predators built for their own style of death. There was Smilodon fatalis, the saber-toothed cat, stocky and powerful with fangs like daggers, ambush predator, bone-piercing jaws. There were short-faced bears, towering omnivores with reach and rage few could match. Even American lions prowled these lands, larger than any big cat alive today. In this frozen food chain, even the alpha had to fight for scraps. Carcasses were battlegrounds. Fossil sites like La Brea tell the story. Scores of dire wolves, saber-tooths, and other carnivores pulled into tar by a single struggling herbivore. They arrived one by one and perished together. The dire wolf carved out its role by targeting large prey. Ice Age horses, ancient camels, bison the size of minivans. Prey that required more than speed. It took patience, precision, and power in numbers. But every meal risked confrontation. A kill made could be a kill stolen. A misstep could mean a broken leg, or worse, a rival's teeth in your throat. And the stakes were only rising. Because as the climate began to shift, food grew scarce, which meant every predator was hunting harder, sooner, longer. The competition didn't stop when the blood dried. It waited and watched, ready to take what others had earned. In this ancient arms race, there were no permanent rulers, only temporary victors, and even the terrible wolf, for all its strength, sat on a kingdom made of bones, always at risk of becoming part of it. It wasn't a single moment, no comet, no flash of fire in the sky, but the end had already begun. Some 12 to 15,000 years ago, a new predator stepped onto the continent, not covered in fur, no claws, no fangs, but holding something far more dangerous: fire, tools, thought. Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, had arrived in the Americas. They were like nothing the dire wolf had ever encountered. Unlike other predators, these newcomers didn't just stalk prey, they outsmarted it. Working in coordinated groups, they drove herds into traps, used spears and atlatls to wound from a distance, targeted the young, the injured, the slow, and they didn't just hunt the same animals the dire wolf depended on. Like bison, camels, and horses, they outcompeted it. At the same time, the world was changing. The last ice age was ending. Temperatures rose, glaciers retreated, forests crept over grasslands, rivers shifted, migration routes vanished, and with them, the herds. The great prey animals dwindled. One by one, they disappeared. For the dire wolves, this was a slow-motion disaster. Their bodies, perfected for big kills, couldn't pivot easily to smaller prey. They were too large, too specialized, too bound to a world that was melting away. Other predators adapted. Gray wolves followed the changing ecosystems. Coyotes, ever flexible, thrived in chaos. Even humans bent the world to suit themselves. But the dire wolf, its strength had become its weakness. When the landscape shifted and the rules rewrote themselves, the terrible wolf was out of time. 13,000 years ago, the howls began to fade. The decline of the dire wolf wasn't sudden. There was no single battle lost, no final winter, just silence creeping in. As the great herds vanished, so too did the wolves that depended on them. Without prey, the pack fragments. Without the pack, the predator dies. Fossil records tell the story in blank spaces. For hundreds of millennia, dire wolf bones are everywhere, in tar pits, riverbeds, shelter caves. Then, suddenly, they're gone. Some of the last known remains are found in Southern California and the Southwest, dated to just before their complete disappearance, their final strongholds. But even there, the pressure was too great. Starvation, increased competition, a world no longer built for beasts of their size. They left no descendants, no direct genetic legacy. DNA studies show they were too different to interbreed with coyotes or gray wolves. Their branch on the evolutionary tree simply ends. No fossils after 9000 BC, no fossilized pups, no new generations, only silence. The Ice Age was over, and with it, an entire world of giants, mammoths, megasloths, saber cats, and the terrible wolf was gone. In the bones, we see the last pulse of a dynasty that ruled the Americas longer than any empire. It didn't vanish in flame or flood. It was outlasted, out-adapted, out-evolved. Even the most powerful predator cannot outrun time. They ruled a wild, frozen kingdom for tens of thousands of years. Fearsome, loyal, precise, not monsters of myth, but masters of their time. The dire wolf was never meant for legend. Its power was real, its bite devastating, its presence undeniable. And yet it disappeared, leaving behind only bones and mystery. Today, we speak its name with curiosity, sometimes confusion. We've shaped it into a symbol, of fantasy, of savagery, of strength. But the truth might be even more compelling. It was a creature shaped by ice, by hunger, by family. It thrived not through magic, but through cooperation and cold calculation. And when the world changed, it couldn't change with it. Not all stories end in survival. Some end in silence. But even extinction leaves echoes. The dire wolf never became today's dog. It gave rise to no new beast, no next chapter. But through fossils, through science, through story, it howls still. A reminder that nature rewards not the strongest nor the fiercest, but the ones who adapt. And as we look back across the millennia, we're left with a single, quiet question. If the Ice Age lived on, would they still be running?